So good morning, everybody. Monday, December 19th, 8:30 a.m. We're going to call our regular meeting of City Council to order the week before Christmas. So Merry Christmas to everyone here and Merry Christmas to all those watching our council meeting today. We're going to start with new and councillor business that we have here. We have one item that's been submitted, and that is 2-1 from Councillor Parslow. Councillor Parslow. We have
the background information in front of you. Do you need me to read that?
We don't need you to read it. It's been submitted. It's just I turn to you if you wish to make the motion.
The recommendation.
So the recommendation that council has in front of them there, you can see. So do I have anyone seconding that? Councillor Wilbur. And discussion. Councillor Schumann.
I'll be speaking against this. I think that our city is a very busy place, and I think our staff need as much time as possible to get the reports in. So I'll be speaking against this.
Councillor Kenny.
I don't see the reasoning for it. I believe that our council meetings are here, and an agenda is prepared here for us to discuss. The issues and information that's brought forward is here for discussion in front of the public. And so if everything is researched and discussed prior to the council meeting, then there's no room for discussion, and we would be doing that behind closed doors rather than doing it publicly. And we want to be an open council. I just took a few minutes and did a quick survey of the other communities and asked them when they received their council agendas. And they all receive them either Thursday afternoon or Friday. And they have their council meetings on Monday. So unless I'm thinking this wrong, I think this is the time to discuss, is here in this council meeting. So I would be speaking against it.
Anyone on my left? No, I tend to agree. I mean, we've had this process for many consecutive councils now, and we've never had an issue. This is our first council meeting as a group, and definitely would like to encourage people to try to go through the process that's been laid out that's worked for everybody else so far. One of the reasons why we do it this way, obviously, is to meet a lot of the needs that are in the community, being responsive to a lot of the developers and people coming forward who have been asking for more time, not less, to be able to submit that. So seeing none on my left, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion as presented? Opposed? And it's defeated. You get the names? You got that? Thanks. We have nothing else submitted for new and councillor business, but I can go around the room if there's anybody specifically that wanted to speak. Councillor Schumann.
Yes, it was December 9/10. I attended the North Central Local Government Association meeting as the Peace River Regional Representative, and that was our first real meeting since we really put that board together at our convention last spring. Mm-hmm. So it was an interesting meeting, and I actually have a PowerPoint that I'm going to send out to the new councillors just to give you an idea of what NCLGA is all about. I had planned on doing that sooner, except that I've been now without internet for several weeks. So as soon as I get that, I will be sending that out to you all so you have an idea about NCLGA. Thank you.
Good. Yes, and thanks for stepping up and being on that committee. Councillor Malkinson.
Me and Mr. Bernier and myself attended the public skate that's sponsored by Mayor and Council yesterday, and I'd like to remind the rest of the councillors that there's a free swim that's being sponsored by Mayor and Council on December the 24th as well, so feel free to attend. I don't mean that in a rude way.
And yes, thanks for skating circles around me and making me look silly. That was... Well, seeing nothing else, we'll move on to minutes. We have 3-1 to 3-3. We have regular minutes, inaugural meeting minutes, and the special meeting minutes, all for adoption. Councillor McFadden, seconded by Councillor Schumann. All those in favor? Opposed, and it's carried. And is there any business arising from anybody? So seeing none, we'll move on to correspondence. First we have is 5-1. This is a letter from the Dawson Creek Senior Canucks. This is a request to host a beer garden at the Memorial Arena. Councillor Schumann.
I would move that we give the Senior Canucks permission to have their beer gardens at the memorial like we have in the past. I don't think we've had any problems with it, so I would make that motion.
Okay, seconded by Councillor Kenny. Any questions from council? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. And 5-2, we have a letter from BC Communities in Bloom, and this is the program again that they're coming forward with. Councillor McFadden.
For information,
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Schumann. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. 5-3 is the letter from the City of Fort St. John. This is the High on Ice Annual Festival. This is the Mayor's Ice Carving Challenge. Councillor McFadden? Sorry, I thought I saw your hand going up.
no, I'm sorry, I was,
Oh, it's Councillor
I think maybe,
Malkinson, sorry. I saw something on my head, sorry.
They're challenging us to go up to Fort St. John and participate, or?
Yes, exactly. So what it is annually they have their High on Ice challenge. They do on the morning, the Saturday morning, they invite usually mayor and council from all the neighboring communities to come up and dabble in trying to do ice carving themselves. And it's a friendly competition, winner takes all though, for between all the different communities. So we've gone there for as many as I can remember that they've been doing this. So.
I couldn't find the date on, like it,
no,
they don't have a date confirmed.
It's it's January 6th.
No, they just said deadline.
Yeah, but there was a date in there.
Ice carving challenge is January 14th, 2012.
Yeah.
If that's correct, the very first line.
So I nominate
it is.
Mayor Bernier.
Yeah. This actually, to council, we can receive this for information,
Yes.
and then we encourage everybody on council, whoever fits into their timelines to, I assume that I'm here, and so I'm looking for everybody to come up and give me a hand with their creative ideas. So for information, Councillor
Yes.
Schumann, seconded by Councillor Malkinson. And then we'll send a memo out to everybody reminding the date if we could. Thank you. So all those in favor? Opposed? And it's carried. 5-4 is a letter from the Union of BC Municipalities, and this is a notification of executive vacancies. Councillor Schumann,
For information.
seconded by Councillor Kenny. Any questions? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. 5-5 is a letter from the BC Oil and Gas Commission. This is a request from them to have a meeting with us. So, Councillor McFadden.
I would move that we invite them to come and speak to us at a time convenient to staff and them at a
Sure.
regular meeting.
At a regular meeting as a delegation.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Wilbur. Any questions? No, it's really, I should just add though, there is a new commissioner, and with the Oil and Gas Commission office that we have set up here in Dawson Creek, we did the official opening of that about a month or two ago. And it's great to have that in the region. It would be a great opportunity to have them here in front of us as well, so we can have any questions for them and listen to hear how things are going in the area. Okay. So for information, all those in favor, or sorry, not for information, but all those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. 5-6 is a letter from the Dawson Creek Fossils Hockey Club, and this is for a special occasion liquor permit.
I move that
Moved
we-
by Councillor Kenny,
I'll second it.
seconded by Councillor Malkinson. And the only reason why I'm smirking is it's being seconded by somebody underage who can't drink. So,
They do a good job every year.
any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed, and it's carried. 5-7 is a letter from the Exploring Art Group members, and this is a request that they have in front of us for some additional work done on the Ed McPhail building or different options. Councillor Schumann.
I'm wondering if this isn't something we could forward on to strategic planning. I think I would make the motion, then we would forward that on to strategic planning and see if it fits in there somewhere.
Sure. Okay, so that is seconded by Councillor Kenny. Yeah, that's, I'm okay with that, and then we can see how it plays out there. We will probably at the end of the day still need to have a report of some sort afterwards come back from staff to find out what the implications are, but definitely we can go there and start the discussion.
This is in the, I'm sorry, this is in the art gallery, the elevator?
Yes,
An elevator.
an elevator in the elevator is what they're looking for.
That's what I was wondering about, actually.
That'd be
If-
fundraising.
Just a better place to actually be able, more accessible for them. They're either the elevator or a downstairs area.
Yeah.
There's been
Okay.
talk of extensions.
And I know they've asked for this, I believe, a
Yeah.
couple of times in the past, so. Any other questions? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. 5.8 is the letter from the Union of BC Municipalities, and this is regarding our 2012 membership. Councillor Schumann?
I would move that we renew our membership in BCM.
Okay, and seconded by Councillor Kenny. And question, Councillor McFadden.
How much is this again?
I believe it's around $6,200 in that ballpark. Jim, am I correct?
Through your worship, I think it's a little closer to 7. I think last year it was
Okay.
6,800,
Oh,
and
68.
they've indicated there will be a slight increase this year.
Okay. Councillor Parsons.
Question 2. What's the total cost the council spends on attending all functions associated with UPCN and its affiliates?
Any idea, Sean?
I don't have that off the top of my head, but certainly can get that information.
You have no ballpark figure? What is that?
No.
It changes from year to year depending on where
is
it's
it?
at, who attends, involvement as well. When you, like myself, in the last couple of years, I've been on there as a director, which means they pay my wages and or my time, my travel, and everything. So it does change from year to year, dependent on that. Any other questions? Okay, so all those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. So not quite 9 o'clock, so we'll move past delegations at this time, and we'll move into reports. The first report we have in front of us.
You need to skip that item as well, your worship,
Oh.
because it's to come after the delegations.
Yes, thank you. We'll do that after, so we'll move to 7.2, which is Report ADM 11-191 from the Deputy Director of Infrastructure and Sustainable Development, and this is a transfer of units. Councillor McFadden.
So moved.
Okay, seconded by Councillor Kenny. Any questions? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. 7.3 is Report 11-210 from the Director of Infrastructure and Sustainable Development, and this is the RFP 2011-29 for our sanitary sewer master plan. Councillor Schumann.
I would move the recommendation.
Seconded by Councillor Kenny. Questions?
134,000?
Yes.
Plus HST.
Has that been budgeted for?
Through your worship, when council committed to the various citizens groups that appeared in front of you that we would do this master plan, you funded it out of the sewer utility?
This obviously won't happen till, next year now. I was wondering about budgeting, whether it was gonna have to go in the next year's budget process, or whether we've already have it tucked away somewhere. That was my question.
Yeah.
really.
And because it's slotted in the, out of the sewer system, then
Yeah.
that money will be carried forward for that.
Yes.
Okay,
Shelter.
thank you.
So any other questions on that? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. 7.4 is Report 11-214 from the Director of Infrastructure and Sustainable Development, and this is for the proposed Rogers telecommunication facility on Alaska Avenue. Councillor Kenny.
I'll move for information.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Wilbur and Councillor McFadden.
As I read this, they can pretty much put the tower wherever they want, whenever they want. We don't really have any, we can't say, no, you can't put it there. They just do what they want.
Aside from zoning,
Yeah.
this meets the applicable zoning where they've chosen.
Yes.
If they tried to put it in a place that didn't meet the zoning, then obviously they couldn't. They'd have to come to us for a zoning amendment, which
Which you
they
know.
don't have to in this situation.
Right.
If you remember, we put this forward to them because
Yeah.
they offered, if we had any questions or concerns, that we could always send them in with the caveat underneath that, but don't be surprised if we don't do anything different.
Right. And this is going to be north of the tracks, in behind,
It's kind of behind the old video store.
yeah. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All those in favor? Opposed, and it's carried. 7.5 is report 11212 from the Director of Infrastructure and Sustainable Development, and this is a development permit application by Anderson Buildings for the new Encana office at 37 Vic Turner Road. Councillor McFadden?
Move the recommendation, Your Worship.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Kenny. Any questions? Just it's great to see. I know there's been a process for probably a year now trying to secure the land and the builder with the RFPs that went out. I was privy to some of that information dealing with Encana for the last 6 months on this, so I'm glad that they're made the commitment and they're coming to town with this. Councillor Kenny.
That was going to be my question. So they're putting the building up, and how many people are expected to be in this building?
It's at this time I'm hearing about 50, but they've left with enough room for expansion. A lot of it's going to be, as you know, they're in the Sawchuck building by A&W presently. They've outgrown that space, so it's an opportunity for them to have their a long-term commitment. I believe they're doing a long-term lease on a building here. So this is showing the commitment to the area, which is nice to see.
Great, thanks.
Okay, any other questions? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Next is 7.6, and this is a report from myself. This is the appointment to the Alaska Highway Community Society. This used to be NARADA in the past, for those who are familiar with that. And this is to have Bud Powell come forward as the community representative. Councillor Schumann
I would move the recommendation. Very
Count.
good choice.
and Councillor Kenny seconding. And I want to thank Bud too. I mean, as everybody knows, he's put in years of his personal time as well into the Tourism Society. It's been his passion, and so I'm glad that he's agreed to stay on for at least another year. He's acted in the role of president. He's won many awards and accolades for his role there, so good on him. Councillor Kenny?
I think it's important too to not stop the train, with Bud not on council, but he has been the big motivator with the Northern Rockies Alaska Highway Tourist Association, and and they've made such strides in their transformation with Northern BC Tourism, and then what's happening with the Alaska Highway and the Heritage Plan and everything. I think it would put things a few steps backwards not having Bud there, so I think that's a very good move to do that.
Yeah.
Just have one question.
Councillor Wilbur?
Mr. Powell does represent Dawson Creek very well on that committee, but I'm just wondering, is this a volunteer position, or will we be paying Mr. Powell or covering his expenses?
It's volunteer.
Perfect, thank you.
Any questions? So all those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. 7.7 is report 11209 from the Deputy Chief Administrative Officer, and this is for the renewal for the operating agreement for the Lakota Agri Center. Councillor Kenny?
I move the recommendation.
Okay, seconded by Councillor Wilbur. Any questions from this? As you can see, the way things have been working presently, it's with a not-for-profit group, a local group. There's a lot of benefits to having them in there. They take a lot of pride into operating that. As we've discussed in the past, events seem to be continuous. There's always people there, and so they've been doing a great job for bringing people into the community as well. Councillor Kenny?
And they also, like, they do reports to the city in their numbers and.
Yes, Jim, is that an annual that they?
Through your worship, we've actually been getting information from them semi-annually.
Okay.
There was a period of time where they were in flux as an organization. We were having difficulty getting information, but they seem to have righted that ship, and we're getting good information from them regularly. If you look at the contract, it's an extraordinarily complex undertaking they've got there for a volunteer group to run, and congratulations to them to being able to pull it off.
Any other questions? All those in favor? Opposed? And it's carried. 7.8 is report 11-219 from the Chief Financial Officer, and this is regarding 110th Avenue roadwork project and a reallocation of funding that's needed. Councillor Kenny.
Move the recommendation.
Okay, seconded by Councillor Wilbur. Any questions on this from anyone? No? All those in favor? Opposed? And it's carried. And moving right along at a great pace here, we'll go into bylaws. Bylaw, first one, 8.1, is a revenue anticipation borrowing bylaw, 4127 for adoption. Councillor Parslow, seconded by Councillor Kenny. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. And then 8.2 is report 11-206 from the Chief Financial Officer. This is temporary borrowing bylaw 4128, and this is for first 3 readings. Councillor Parslow, seconded by Councillor Kenny. Please note under the recommendation there as well that with that as a special meeting December 22nd at 8:30. You got your BlackBerry there? You're good? Okay. So all those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. On that, Jim, do you want to jump in the diary? I'm going to skip over mayor's business in case anything comes out of delegations that we need to discuss.
You betcha. I'll kick that over to Greg for reports on Calvin Crook Center and the reclaimed water.
Thank you, Your Worship. With the Calvin Cook Center, we are working on encapsulating the lead paint and mold remediation. However, thank God, the asbestos removal is now complete. The pigeon problem is now under control as well, so we've started steel stud framing on the top floor. We're continuing to work in the theater section, structural steel welding, building of the mezzanine. The mezzanine's complete. And now that we've got the sewer lift station installed, mechanical has restarted. And once we get rid of that lead paint, which will be sometime in January, things should really start picking up there. With the reclaimed water plant, everything is going along very smoothly. All the foundation wet well work is done, and masons are going to start arriving after Christmas, so you'll start to see it going up at that point. All the underground piping work is done, along with the underground vaults, and the connection to the Shell pump house is completed. It's on schedule and on budget. I don't get to say that very often, so I'm going to say it. And there'll be more financial information about the projects in Janet's Committee of the Whole report. That's all I have for now.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Greg? Councillor McFadden?
The Crook Center, I understand, is about 3 or 4 months behind construction schedule, but still on time budget-wise. I don't understand how you can be 4 months behind construction and still be on time for budget. So, and then with the reclaimed water, I see some big trailers there that says something reindeer. I don't know. Are they the people that are building it, or has somebody got a herd of reindeer out there? Maybe Santa's camped out there, is he?
Through your worship, last one first.
Yeah.
The company that's doing the work is Maple Rinders.
I'm sorry?
It's Maple Rinders.
Well, I was driving past it after the hockey game, so it was dark.
And it looks just like reindeer. Yeah, you're right. With the Calvin Cook Center, the reason we're still on budget is that Well, there's a couple reasons. One, we haven't done a lot of work, so we're not spending money at a great rate. And the other one is the initial, the tender came in well under the projected budget, so we had a huge contingency. And as I've been reporting out for the last while, we're eating that up at a great rate. And we are going to have to, early in the new year, sit down and have a look at the budget and determine what needs to be cut or delayed in order to make sure that we still have enough money to finish it.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Does that work? Okay.
What was that?
Rinder.
Reindeer?
Reinders.
Reinders.
Grinders.
What the hell's a rinder?
It's a last name, sir. Kind of like what's a McFadden.
Yeah.
Good. On that, everyone, we've moved along at a really good pace. We'll just end off here with the consent calendar, if somebody wishes to move that. Councillor Schumann, seconded by Councillor Kenny. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. And on that, we will take a 4-minute recess, top up your coffees, and then we will move into delegations.
So, remember 7-1.
Grinder.
It's all in pronounced.
So welcome back, everyone. We're going to call the meeting to order. We've moved back to delegations. So we have 3 delegations this morning. We're going to start off with our first one, which is 6-1. We have Mr. David McDonald in attendance, who wishes to talk to council for a few minutes regarding Site C, it looks like. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Your Worship. Good morning, councillors. Merry Christmas to everybody and your families. Thank you very much for taking a few minutes to hear me out. All right, I'll sit down.
Make yourself comfortable.
I don't have a lot to say. I've just been following Site C quite a bit here, and I haven't really seen any ask coming from the city on it. And I was wondering if we have approached them in relation to low-income housing for the community instead of these work camps they plan to set up, or possibly any sort of funding to help upkeep and upgrade our infrastructure that's going to become under tremendous pressure from the amount of people and work that is going to be coming through here.
Sure.
That's all I have to say.
Okay, perfect, yeah. What I can tell you is through BC Hydro as well, there is a Site C working group. I do sit on that for one, with Councillor Schumann, I believe, is the alternate for when I'm not available. Also, being kind of a regional issue, the regional district is taking quite a lead in this as well. We've been discussing it quite frequently at our regional district meetings on a process that we're putting in place where we've been meeting and sending letters to BC Hydro and to the provincial government, working with them as the process unfolds for Site C, trying to stay on top of what, from a community perspective, communities, I guess, from the Peace region, where we're going to fit into this, because we know that there's going to be issues. Right now, there's not been any concrete answers from the province or BC Hydro of what they will or won't do, whether it's Site C or whether it's housing or whether it's some sort of funding initiatives that'll go to the municipalities, but we have been continually asking them. So.
All right, no problem. Thank you very much for hearing me out. It's just something I hadn't seen or heard of, so I figured I'd ask.
Sure, thank you. And Councillor Kenny?
I was just saying that BC Hydro has been having business information meetings throughout the region. Have you attended them?
Yes, I have.
Oh, okay.
I didn't hear this asked at him, as of the last one. I didn't hear anything about it. So it was something that I thought should be brought forward, because I know there are other communities that have made demands on them. And I mean, if we already have a situation arising, I think it'd be a good idea before we tax the system, if we could get some help. They got an $8 billion price tag. Maybe they could help us with something that we need for our community.
But the reason I'm asking is because that question did come up.
Really?
At that last meeting.
I mustn't have had enough coffee. On the one on the 24th?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, and there was discussion. The question came up about housing when they were asking
Strange.
people.
Yeah, I saw the work camps were their suggestion, but I didn't hear anything about that. I'll go review the notes further on it and see if I can find a video.
Maybe it wasn't captured, but it did come up.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
And on that, we will have, I believe, another meeting shortly in the new year. BC Hydro's been calling the meetings about quarterly with the working group. I haven't received an email lately, but it's been a couple of months, so I anticipate that there'll be another meeting with that group here probably in late January, I'm thinking, and so I'll make sure that, that's top of mind again when we're there. So we'll move into the second delegation then. We have Mr. Doug Reagan in attendance. Morning, sir.
Morning.
Merry Christmas to you. How can we help you today, sir?
My secretary's working today, so I have to do everything myself. First of all, I'd like to congratulate all the council members who won in the last election. Being unsuccessful, I show a better appreciation of what you've gone through and kind of what you have in store for you for the next 3 years. I'm going to jump ahead to something that has recently, well, it happened, caught my attention the election, and for you people that were paying attention, you probably heard that Abbotsford ousted their long-term 16 years, I believe, mayor, and it was over this triple P funding plan that the federal government put forward. Bringing up to speed on that, public and private partnership (PPP) Canada became operational in February 2009, and has a total of $1.2 billion to allocate under P3 Canada Fund. PPP Canada explicitly promotes privatization of public services by only providing funding for P3 in water and wastewater, transportation and communications. Triple P Canada states the fund has created to improve the delivery of public infrastructure and provide better value. However, P3s in Canada have found to be more costly, and as the Canadian Centre for Public Alternatives notes, a string of failures, delays, little transparency, and selective deals proved these claims wrong. The Mayor of Abbotsford has taken a new public approach by to meeting the city and region's future water needs, since the residents of Abbotsford recently rejected the Slave Lake P3 water project by an overwhelming 75%. And in turn, they also turned down $65 million grant from the federal government, sending a clear message that this community will not accept federal money with P3 strings attached. Harper's government is in effect forcing communities to privatize their services by making access to federal funds for vital infrastructure projects such as water and sewer and wastewater conditions upon projects being P3. BC communities began joining the lobby early this year, beginning with Mission Council's decision to Harper demanding they make federal funds available for public water infrastructure, not just P3s. A similar resolution was passed at the Union of BC Municipalities Convention in September, garnering almost unanimous support of municipal leaders throughout BC. I believe our mayor was at that meeting, were you, sir?
Yes.
And which direction were you leaning? Pro PP3 or against PP3?
Well, I was not able to vote in this as I'm part of the resolutions committee. I was the one chairing the resolution, so I'm not eligible to vote.
Oh, did you have an opinion, sir?
I definitely have an opinion. This council here, and I guess, did you want to finish reading it first before so I don't seem like I'm interrupting you?
The city of Dawson Creek should follow Abbotsford's lead in rejecting P3 attached federal funding and reject privatization of our water and wastewater. We need to maintain our hold on our water rights and continue to own the entire water system. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. As you know, and we've discussed this, delegations are used for bringing forward a specific ask. So is your ask just on what my opinion is?
Yes, what is your opinion, sir?
Okay, my opinion is, and it's on behalf of this council too, we have never brought anything forward where we are making any motions to go to a P3 system, where we're looking at privatizing our water. So I'm not sure if you've heard differently or why this would come forward, but this council here and last councils, to the best of my knowledge, even when I was not around, I stand to be corrected and staff will correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there's been any motion to switch to a P3. We have our own water system, we have our own sewer system, and they're maintained and operated completely by the city of Dawson Creek. And we plan on keeping it that way.
That's exactly what we want, sir.
So that's what we're doing.
Okay, circumstances will sometimes dictate what our decisions are. Now, in our previous dealings, and it isn't really privatization when you get Shell to pre-buy water. That's a good deal as far as I'm concerned. The devil may be in the details. If we overcommitted to how much sewage will be producing and making available to them, if there's a shortfall, what do we have to do to make up the shortfall?
Absolutely nothing. We have quite an extensive contract with Shell on this specific one, so for some reason, if there was not enough water, or reclaimed water, I guess, going through the facility to meet what the contract states for them, that's at no penalty to the city. They just won't get as much water, and they've signed off on that agreement and they're aware of that.
So, sir, you can tell me with no hesitation that if there is a shortfall in the amount that we produce through the sewer system, we don't have to make up the shortfall through our water system. In other words, give them water from the Kiskatna rather than from the sewer system.
Yeah, no, and I don't have the
That can't
exact
happen,
wording.
sir?
Not under our contract that we have with them. I mean, whether they go through the OGC and find other ways of getting water, that's entirely up to Shell and every other company in the area, which is what they're doing right now. But through our potable system right now, we have nothing in the contract that says if we're not meeting the needs through the reclaimed, that we will subsidize it, I guess, through potable.
That's reassuring to know, sir. Thank you. Other than that, I
Jim,
believe
I'm just going to interrupt you for 2 seconds. Jim, is the contract available? Like, is the entire contract available
Yes,
online? I thought it was.
In the alternative elector approval process, the whole contract was made available. It's still out there.
Yeah.
Get a copy. Not only in your time as mayor, but several times previous to that, staff has received specific direction from council that we are not to entertain privatizing our water or our sewer as even an option to consider. And in fact, on the wastewater project, council didn't say they were against getting money from P3 Canada. They were just against any privatization. So we did apply on the Shell proposal for money from P3 Canada, and they rejected it exactly on the basis that we were not transferring ownership or operational control, so we weren't eligible.
that's good. I'm glad we weren't. Other than that, I believe I'll leave you with that today. I won't bother going into any other minor little griefs I have. You all know what my main topic would be, but we'll get back to that at another time. Thank you very much for your time, Council.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
On that, we'll move into our final delegation today, which is 6-3. We have Mr. Greg Mitchell from McElhaney and Patricia Maloney from Patricia Maloney and Associates in attendance. And this is going to be an opportunity for them to bring forward, as you know, they were the consultants working on the airport sustainability plan. The plan is in the agenda, and I know everybody's had a chance to read it, but we will have good time for questions and answers here. Oh, you got it. Well, we don't have bus here. We did? Yeah.
Okay. 22 pages.
I think I sent you the right one.
That is too dark, yeah, just.
Good morning. I'm Pat Maloney, Greg Mitchell. We've met some of you before.
see you again.
Congratulations on the election results and Merry Christmas. So we've got a short PowerPoint presentation, and if you haven't had time to read the document, it summarizes everything, and then we'd be happy to answer any questions afterwards. So I'll let Greg start.
Sure. Pat and I were discussing last night how to break this down, so we'll play it by ear. Some of you may have seen this this headline in Vancouver Province. I certainly got a phone call from my mom when it showed up on the newspaper going, "Hey, have you seen this?" So, and it was quite an interesting article, and it actually plays a little bit into what we're talking about here today, which is how do we make it easier for people to want to be in Dawson Creek, and this airport plan that Pat and I have worked on, I think, goes a long way to achieving that. So I just wanted to start off with that and say it's certainly getting some media play in Vancouver. I certainly had some coworkers talk about it, and like I say, my mom phoned me about it.
Greg, I should tell you that I've probably had easily 50 people send me emails and resumes and stuff like that.
Excellent.
Thank Michaela Garston over in the corner on the red behind me for working on that story.
And personally
Making my
speaking,
phone line busy.
I believe I heard that you would walk through Occupy Vancouver handing out business
That's
cards.
a great urban myth, yes.
Okay.
It's a great urban
Okay, so I'm. Oh, sorry.
And can I just, for the new councillors who might not have all the history to this, just to give a slight intro. The city put out a proposal call for consultants to do a sustainability plan for the airport. The airport is all airports, particularly regional airports and community airports, are challenged, and so the sustainability report was to look at what could be done in the short, medium, and long term to help the airport be successful. The overriding premise was there will be an airport, so that's where we started from on this study, and so Greg's gonna. Sorry, I interrupted. Go ahead.
No worries. Pat and I work well together on this. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we know about the airport, what some of the things we learned in the research leading up to it. Talk a little bit about what we heard at the public engagement strategies sessions that we saw many of you at. And then Pat's going to talk about our recommendations and really where we go from here. And with that, I'll get going. So what we know. None of this is going to be groundbreaking, I think, to many people. We know that one flight per day and the timing of that flight, it's not enough at the moment to really provide that important connection. For example, in both our times coming up here, Pat and I haven't been able to land at the airport. The first time it was fogged in. In order to get here on time for this morning's meeting, we had to fly into Grand Prairie last night. So, from personal experience, we've now experienced some of the challenges that you face. Yeah, we confirmed it. We also know that timing and the destinations where those planes could conceivably go is important. The economic reality is the economy up here runs east-west. Yes, I'm from Vancouver, that's fine, but I can read the tea leaves. Alberta is where the economy is driven from up here. The benefits that this airport has, its location. It's 5 kilometers from your central downtown area. It's easy access when you get there. The fuel cost for planes in Dawson Creek is highly competitive. And anecdotally, from what we heard from the pilots that we spoke to at the public engagement sessions, is that the airport has an excellent reputation for service. It may not always be out there in the public realm that these services exist, but for example, if a plane needs refueling at 3 in the morning and they make a phone call, somebody from that airport will go out there to provide that service. That is above and beyond the call of duty. We heard the same thing about when it snows, the airport here is often accessible, whereas other airports have challenges. So this is a really big benefit upon which to grow. So the amenities and services are top notch, and the way I phrased it is even if no one knows about it. It's a long way to go to another airport. We've experienced it twice, landing in Fort St. John the first time, landing in Grand Prairie yesterday. So it's 130 kilometers round trip to Fort St. John.
Fort St. John, sorry.
Fort St. John, and over 200 round trip to Grand Prairie. So in the aspects of the Dawson Creek sustainability plan and desire for that. People are conceivably burning a lot of greenhouse gas. It was beyond the scope of our study to really look at measuring that, but I think it goes without saying. We missed an opportunity yesterday on the plane to do a straw poll to see who on the plane might have been driving to Dawson Creek. But I suspect, given the traffic on the highway, there were quite a few people returning home to Dawson Creek. So we know that the airport is not just an amenity to the community. It provides, in addition to just general access and economic benefit, we heard, I believe, from Councillor Wilbur at the public open house, the value from a medevac perspective. And while we were here last time, we saw no less than 3 medevac circumstances where ambulances drove on the tarmac, people were loaded, or people were coming. We don't know the situation, obviously, but it has immense value in that sense. The roads weren't bad yesterday, but I can imagine the drive to Grand Prairie or the drive somewhere else in a dicey winter condition would be a bit more challenging. So having that in close proximity is very valuable. We also know that Dawson Creek is growing. And while it may be limited in its ability to grow by the referencing the province article that I showed earlier, where it's hard to get people to stay up here, but this is potentially a way to encourage people and make it easier for people to live in a community like this. We also know from what we learned, from what we've learned from Pat's experience, that extending the runway right now is not immediately required. There's a lot of things we can do before we get to that step that we think will have a lot of immediate value. And lastly, I've phrased it as use and protect it or risk losing it. There's issues about airside land, there's issues about construction and proximity to the runway that we have to be taken into consideration in order to protect the value and access to that airport in the long term. And ultimately comes down to certification from NAV Canada to ensure that it's still an airport that services can use. So a little bit about what we heard. We heard that people equate the airport with investment and jobs. We also heard that start small, grow big. And people really do value the ability to connect to other communities, be it Vancouver, be it Edmonton, be it Calgary. And one of the things that was a recurring theme, a city that wants to be a place to live needs an airport. I heard that many times through speaking to people at the public open houses. We handed out a number of surveys. There were about 60 surveys returned from the various engagement sessions. And almost to a letter, everyone was strongly supportive. Now, take it for what you will. These were public engagement sessions about the airport. Interested people do attend these things. But I think it does also speak to that there is some community demand for the airport. There's also, it leads me to believe that there's latent demand for the airport services if we can get those additional services in place. Some of the other things we heard, again, talking about the access to and from Alberta with better timing. Obviously arriving at noon and leaving at 4. To and from Vancouver is not great. Having nothing to and from Alberta obviously is even worse. There's sort of this belief, and I think it's more of a belief and more of a fact, that when people go to these other communities to drive or go on vacation, and they're using the services and stores and generating tax revenue for those communities as opposed to keeping it in Dawson Creek. There's certainly a community belief and a political belief. We believe that there is a future opportunity for the airport here. And again, the latent demand for Dawson Creek Airport, but the services, i.e. the flights, right now are limited, that people don't even consider it in their short-term thinking. Lastly, we also have heard from some of the private pilots, from some of the people, that there's an educational aspect required to get the information about the value and the opportunities and the services that are at that airport out there in the public realm, and that some of the facilities do need updated. Some investment is required to bring that airport into, it's not compliance, that's not the right term, but into a modern sense with some of the lounge facilities. And then we referenced the lounge specifically because that was one that kind of surprised us, to make sure that private pilots, when they're flying their corporate clients to and from, well, those private pilots, I believe, have a lot of say in where those planes land. And if they're going to be stuck on the ground for 6 hours, they're not going to want to stay in this lounge, for example. So that's something we heard from private pilots at the various engagements. So I'm going to pass it to Pat, who's going to talk a little bit about the strategies, and then at the end, again, we're happy to answer some questions.
I just want to say on that picture, I'm not sure why they wouldn't want to stay in there, because I had that same couch in the 1960s.
I think I did too.
Is that your coach?
My background in planning has included airport planning for the last 15 years, and I've done regional and community plans, about 25 strategic and master plans for smaller airports, including Prince Rupert, Peace River, High River, High Level, sorry. I've worked in a number of different small airports. So what we've come up with are recommendations that we believe are realistic and pragmatic. We haven't been dreaming blue sky here, because we know that's not what you need. You need to know what you can do to make things work. So we've been really realistic and pragmatic. So we've broken it down into short, medium, and long-term recommendations, and the short term can be accomplished easily and relatively cheaply within the 3-year time frame, and then we build it up. So all of these strategies aim to ensure that the airport is operationally effective, safe, and provides the opportunity for the facility to grow with the needs of the community. So we'll just run through the short-term options. So the pilot's lounge, and Greg's right. What we heard was the pilot, if the client is coming up here for something in the region, the pilot can make the recommendation of whether they go to Fort St. John, Grand Prairie, or here. And the pilot's lounge and the ability for the pilot to hang out while the client is doing business is an important thing. The pilot's lounge is pretty under the level of what I've seen at other small airports. It just doesn't meet their needs. So we looked at some of the options, and of course we wanted to be cost effective. The flight services building that NAVCAN owns sits completely unoccupied except for all of their mechanical and electrical. I mean, it has to stay there because of all the mechanical and electrical for all the navigational aids, but the building is empty. So one of the things that we looked at was, would it be appropriate for a pilot's lounge? And it would be very appropriate for a pilot's lounge, and in fact would have enough room to move the airport administration services in there as well, which gives you more room in the terminal for other uses. It is completely equipped. It's got bathrooms, it's got kitchen, it's got storerooms. And for minimal cost, and the cost would be basically to extend the secure fencing so that there would be secure access to the building. Right now the access is outside of the secure fencing, so you just have to change the fencing and do a few minor modifications in the building, and it would be one of the better pilot lounges and administration facilities. And just as an example, at High Level, the airport manager's offices are in the tower structure as well. So this isn't anything new. The building is there, it's empty, and you know, could be leased for $1 a year kind of thing, and it would be a good opportunity. How do I pass forward it? The second thing that we were talking about for short term is synchronized airport marketing. There are a lot of organizations that promote the city and promote activities here, and the airport hasn't necessarily been included in some of that advertising, and if we could synchronize that marketing and advertising and get the name out, that would be terrific. Small things can really make a big difference. The Canada Flight Supplement is something that every pilot uses, and again, if it said, you know, new and improved pilot's lounge, it would be unbelievable. The pilots would come just to check it out. So little things like that, and working with the organizations. One of the things we noticed driving in last night was we didn't actually see an airport sign on the highway. Now, unless we completely missed it, but before, when you're coming into town, suddenly the airport's there. There was no sign on the highway, and it's just little things that highways will put out the green airport signs. So if we missed it, that's our fault, but we didn't see one. So little things like that make quite a significant difference in just people's knowledge that the airport is there. You're really trying to put it in the forefront of people's mind that you have an airport. Governance review. One of the things that that was brought up in the study was the different forms of governance, and do we have the most appropriate form of governance for the airport? Should it be completely run by the city? And I'm not talking about privatization. You do have an airport manager. You're very lucky to have him. He was Transport Canada trained. He's very experienced. He knows airports inside and out. And airports are having small airports are having a lot of problem right now finding airport managers or infrastructure people to manage airports, because Transport Canada doesn't have the training program, isn't bringing along airport managers anymore. So having Ian Darling is a real advantage to the airport. But looking at governance and looking at funding opportunities and how we can maybe make the airport more functional. And I don't know that there is an answer to that, but we just completed a governance study for Peace River Airport, and they were looking at bringing in the other municipalities and the region to be involved with the airport, because they gain benefit from it as well. So just a review that could be done to look at it and see if there's anything that can be done to improve the existing situation. The whole issue of airlines and flights is, quite frankly, out of the hands of the municipality and the airport owner. The only thing that you can do is try and work with the airlines and convince them that there is demand and that they could fill their aircraft. An airline won't run a flight in unless they're basically guaranteed 80% passenger load. One of the things that came up was we need to do more study on I take the royal we, sorry. You need to do more study and more assessment on who is using the airport, who isn't using the airport, and where people are going. And you can do that by doing a ticket pull, which basically pulls the tickets of all the people flying out of Fort St. John and Grand Prairie and gives you their home address and where they were going to. So if you find that a large number of people from Dawson Creek are driving to Fort St. John or Grand Prairie and flying to Edmonton or Calgary, that's something then you can take to the airlines and say, look, this is what's happening. One of the other things we were talking about, and we get into the medium term, is if you want an aircraft to leave first thing in the morning, you almost are going to have or provide or work with the airlines to build a hangar to overnight that aircraft. They do not like leaving them outside in the winter in this kind of climate. That changed Nanaimo significantly. When they got Air Canada to overnight an aircraft there, suddenly they had a 6:15 flight out in the morning, and the increase in use was significant at that airport. So these things, this is something that needs to be worked with the airlines and is not going to be easy. Airlines such as Air Canada and WestJet use a hub and spoke system, and going from Dawson to Alberta is not in their hub and spoke. Going from Dawson to Vancouver is their mindset. I mean, if you look at, other than Prince George, everything else goes down to Vancouver, which if you're going to Calgary or Edmonton always seems a bit ridiculous, so which is another reason why you might want to fly to or drive to Grand Prairie and fly out of there. So if we can get the information that will convince the airlines that there's an opportunity, that's what's going to change that.
One thing I should mention is I just threw 4 names of aircraft or air companies. These are not the only ones. There are other companies out there that can be considered here.
Yeah.
The other issue here is focus direction. We've sort of heard through our consultation that a lot of different parties are chasing airlines for come to Dawson Creek. Ian Darling's doing it. I believe Your Worship is doing it. The Chamber of Commerce is doing it. And there really needs to be a focused direction and a focused attack towards that end goal. Right now it's a bit scattered, it's a bit of a shotgun approach, but we need to really narrow it down and with a bit more focus, identify the opportunities through things like a ticket pull.
Yeah.
That a collective group or represented by one or 2 parties can then actually go out and talk to those airlines with some knowledge.
Just a question, if I can interrupt, about this ticket pull. My understanding is there's a computer system that the airlines use to book tickets, and for a fee, you can
Yes,
have a company tap into that system and get the information.
that's correct.
So you don't have to go to an airport and sit there.
No, that's right. No. I know years ago I used to do that with bus transfers when we did transit studies. No, that's right. You can get the company to do it. It's not cheap, but it does give you good information. The only thing it doesn't give you is lost opportunity of people who just decide to drive to Edmonton rather than do all the other stuff. But it does give you that information, yes. And Greg's right. We've put up 4 airline names. I just want to say one thing about the WestJet name up there. They can't and won't use this airport because of runway, and the other thing too is that they don't have aircraft that would be an appropriate size. If we're looking at a regional size, they only fly 737-700s. That's all they fly now. Whereas Air Canada, Central Mountain Air, and Pacific Coastal have smaller aircraft that could accommodate maybe the numbers of people that we might be talking about in the short term. So those were the short term. In the medium term, you could certainly look at doing the study on a runway extension. You could look at 1,000 feet, you could look at 1,500 feet. You could do a full cost assessment, and then you would at least have the information in your hands to determine if that is something that you want to do. Runway extension is not the be-all and end-all, but given your short-term work and your negotiations with airlines, you may find out that is what is required for the airport. But I will also caution you that just because an airline says that they will fly there if you have a longer runway doesn't mean they actually will fly there if you extend your runway. And there have been several airports that have been burnt by that, extending their runway, and then WestJet has not flown in there. So you just have to be really careful about that, because a runway extension is a very expensive job. When a lot of airports were taken over by municipalities, they looked at it as getting a mile of asphalt, and they thought of it like getting a mile of road or a mile of highway, except that it's way wider and way deeper and way more costly to maintain. So this one we caution you about, but nevertheless, in the medium term, you could definitely get the study done, and then you have the information to make the assessment. Also in the medium term, there were 2 things that came up, one of which is a lot of airport land has been sold. When I say airport land parallel to the runway. In my world of airport planning, I would have advised against that at the time, because that's lost revenue. Because otherwise you could have had leases on there and you could have had annual revenue coming in. You also have more control as the owner of the land or the long-term lease as to what goes in there. You could have ensured that they were in fact aviation related, and if you wanted to sell land for other industrial uses, you could have done that maybe elsewhere. So if there's an opportunity, if any of those parcels come up for sale and there's an opportunity for the city to get them back, it might be a good thing to do. The other thing is you've got the city yards airside, and that's something that would be a really terrific site for should you want to have a hangar for an overnight aircraft and want to expand the apron. That's a perfect site. So again, in the medium term, maybe you could look at finding another location to relocate the public yards and turning that back into airside land for the airport. The airplane hangar and apron expansion, again, medium term, to overnight the aircraft, and then you would have a maintenance ability. Now, I know that there's a maintenance program at the college. I understand students aren't it's inappropriate and not allowed for them to actually work on aircraft, but the instructors sure could. And if you had, again, a maintenance ability at the airport, that would, and an overnight ability, that would enhance this airport significantly for the industry. And long term, another medium term. One of the things that we looked at was if you were going to really pursue airport, and again it comes to this focusing the direction, that you might in the long term look, or in the medium term, sorry, look for an economic development officer, and particularly one who would be geared to airport business. Since the airport is owned by the airport, it allows that person to pursue businesses, tenants, airlines, tour groups, work with the marketing people, and focus that. So for long term, really, the only thing we've got for long term is if you decided to extend the runway. And as I said, there's a lot of factors that go into that decision as to whether or not you're going to do it. The first of which is finding money. The community, when we met with the community believes that it's actually pretty easy to go and get grant money. That certainly hasn't been my experience with other airports for large infrastructure projects like this. And you know, with a runway extension, we're talking millions of dollars. You know, there's a lot to be done there. So that's long term. If you look at the trend in some of the regional jets, they are able to actually land on shorter runways, and so you know, extending it beyond the 5,000 feet may not necessarily be the critical thing. Greg put these slides together. So right now the Dash 8 flies in. The 100 series, which they are going to be discontinuing, only needs just over 2,600 feet. The Beechcraft requires 2,800 feet. 19 passengers, again, would be a great connector to some of the other airports.
Central Mountain Air flies Beechcraft.
Yeah.
They also fly the Dash 8-300.
Yeah, and the Dash 8-300 is what Jazz is flying in here now, needs under 3,900 feet of runway.
One correction I realize now, the seats on that should read 50.
Yeah, that's
so
50,
that's
50
a
seats,
typo
not
on my
26,
part. My
it's
apologies.
50 feet. 50 seats. The 400 is the one that will be coming in to replace the 100 and can still land on 4,600 feet and seat 70 people. The RJ is can land on 4,700 feet with 43 passengers, and this is the Jazz aircraft. The Bombardier RJ cannot land here. It requires a longer runway. But you can see that a lot of the Air Canada and Central Mountain Air aircraft can handle, including the new ones, can handle the existing runway. So if unless you think you need to have 130 people on a plane, a 747 may not be the critical aircraft for the airport. So that's a really quick summary, and if you have any questions, we'd be very, very happy to answer them.
Thanks, Glenn. Thanks, Greg.
From the gallery.
Not at this time, sir. Councillor Malcolmson.
I was just curious about that tower that we have. You said it was owned by NavCam.
Yes.
Would there be any conflict setting up a pilot's lounge, do you think, in that
No.
building?
From my understanding, through the background research we were provided, the Nav Canada building, there's a sales agreement, or there was sort of an agreement to purchase at some point a couple of years ago, 2008. And I believe this purchase agreement was for $10.
Yeah.
And then there was a 1-year lease back per year for the navigation equipment in the basement, which has to stay for safety purposes.
NavCam, basically, all their equipment takes the main floor. Second floor is where the kitchens and washrooms are, and then the third floor is the observation, which could be used for offices.
Okay.
And the report also identified that to bring that building up to sort of maintain it in the present time, I believe it was about $60,000 worth of fixing and sort of updating. Some paneling was cracked and some exterior siding and insulation had to be replaced. And then we figured it would cost somewhere between 10 and 15, maybe 20,000 to do a full reno inside to make it amenable for a pilot's
And that
lounge,
includes the fence,
including
the security
fence adjustment and locks and all that. These are estimates, obviously, but certainly we feel that the opportunity is there to take advantage of an existing piece of infrastructure. It's also one of the most identifiable pieces of any building when you get to the airport. Not only is it a control tower and people automatically identify it with an airport, but any images I've seen referencing the Dawson Creek Airport always sort of focus on the tower.
Okay. Councillor Parcel.
I don't see in your report anywhere a definition of a sustainable airport. Can you offer me one?
A definition of a sustainable airport. Frankly, financially, airports don't make money. They are a piece of the infrastructure. They're a piece of the transportation network. So we don't have a specific definition for a sustainable airport. In my mind, it would be an airport that would be that would operationally break even or possibly make some money operationally. It would be one that serves the community adequately, and it would be one that that contributes to the region. So it's not a hard and fast definition for sure.
Thank you. Councillor Schumann?
Hi. So what I'm looking at is one of the things that I find the most frustrating about our airport is the service we're getting. We're not able to fly in and out, et cetera, et cetera. So having the medium term, like the hangar, 3 to 6 years off, that doesn't really help us out much with getting that service. Do you think there's the ability to get increased service even without that hangar? Is that why it's put in like the 3 years down the road? Ideally, I would love to have a better service.
I think there could be. Air Canada currently runs a flight from the aircraft overnights in Calgary, and it leaves at 6 in the morning to go to Cranbrook, so that it can turn around and leave at 7:15 to go back to Calgary to give Cranbrook that air service. So I think there are ways and means of doing it, and I think that if you pick an airline, whether it's Pacific Mountain or Central Mountain
Pacific
or Air Canada, and work with them and say, okay, this is what we're committed to if you commit. They don't make guarantees, and they change things every 6 months, but at least if you could get them to adjust the flight schedule, would give you the confidence to invest the money. And I think the estimate was $600,000 for a hangar. I mean, it's not cheap. So you really want to have some commitment from the
For the apron extension and a hangar, we estimated somewhere between $500,000 and $600,000, I believe. And that was including the apron extension, which is a significant piece of, again, same idea with the runway. There's sort of pavement width, pavement depth to accommodate weight of an aircraft. And that's not an inexpensive piece of infrastructure to bring that over, and taxiways, etc. So it's not just the structure.
Not just the structure, it's getting it to it. You got to get the planes to it.
Second to that is the works yard. The hangar that we would envision right now where it could go is where the city works yard is. And I think that's why we put it in the medium term, is there does need to be an internal discussion.
Okay, thanks. Jim, you want to say something?
As I understand the phasing of the recommendations, what our consultants are telling us is it's not so simple as you build a new runway, you build a hangar, you build an apron, and people will automatically come. Their proposal is, in the near term, you get the information about how many people are leaving the community and why, and you hope it shows a business case for an airline to come in. But it won't necessarily show that, and until you have that, you can't begin to convince them, and it doesn't matter whether you have a hangar or an apron or an extended runway. First you have to demonstrate that there's passengers.
Which is the answer I usually get from airlines presently, is
Yeah.
they don't feel there's a need. So, Councillor Malkinson?
No, I already spoke. Mrs. Wilbur could go if she'd like.
Okay, Councillor
Just
Wilbur.
looking at the short term, I'm looking at the ticket pull for sure, and I'm wondering if we couldn't work with Central Mountain Air, having those numbers that they increase their service already here. But also the Pilot's Lounge looks like that's probably a very quick and inexpensive investment to get those pilots to want to land here. So I think short term, some very inexpensive possible things to do for our airport. So I'm asking the most important things in short term.
I forget the acronym, but I believe it was the Canadian Pilots Association. COPA, thank you. And the American equivalent were coming here for a big event, I believe, next year or 2013. For example, there's an opportunity to show it off. This is something in the back of my head. But
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions from council? And we'll get to media questions in a minute if you don't mind. So, Councillor Kenny?
When you were speaking about a community economic development officer, I think that's what happened in Kelowna, did it not? That they it wasn't just Kelowna Economic Development Commission, but a group of the surrounding area.
Mm-hmm.
Their big focus was to improve the airport in Kelowna.
And they had a very,
correct?
they had
Yes.
a very aggressive airport
I-
manager who went out
Yes,
and
yeah.
they marketed.
They really marketed
Yeah.
it. Yeah, I remember that happening about, 5-6 years ago.
Yeah, maybe even a little bit longer. Yeah,
Maybe we should be looking at their example, because it wasn't just Kelowna. It took a whole regional rallying to bring that to fruition.
and through the chair, I mean, it really, I mean, an airport doesn't just serve the people in the city of Dawson Creek, and that's what Peace River was looking at. Their complication was the airport was owned by the city, but it was in the rural area, and so they were trying to get the 5 municipalities. In Alberta, it's a little bit different because rural municipalities are full municipalities with council and control over all their zoning and roads and everything. But they were trying to get the 5 municipalities together to get financial contribution to get them all to support the airport. So
Because we do have a South Peace Economic Development Commission that represents all the communities in the South Peace.
yeah.
And so there could be an interest that be a focus with the municipalities in the South.
One of the other opportunities I think exists is the business community in Dawson Creek, particularly the larger oil and gas companies. I would believe, without any full understanding of what their demands are, that there are some demands for flights from Edmonton to Dawson Creek to service those companies. They already fly private planes in on fairly frequently. I would think that from a cost-effective point of view, if you can provide the services and as a group talk to the airlines and say, hey, we will support X number of tickets per year or something like that, in exchange for building the runway, there might be an opportunity to bring those scheduled flights in through another, through backdoor is the wrong term, but through the business community specifically.
There's another opportunity too, though, with the huge mining industry, and they're going to Vancouver.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's
They go
exactly
to
what I mean.
Vancouver.
Yeah.
So
That's right, yeah, mining goes to Vancouver, oil and gas
Vancouver,
goes-
oil and gas goes to
Yeah.
Calgary.
Which is a good point, because when I fly, if I'm out of Fort St. John, it's amazing how many people are from Tumbler Ridge,
Yeah.
Chetwynd area.
Yeah.
They're flying back to the island for their week off or 2 weeks off.
Yes.
So that's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, their head offices are.
Any other questions for our delegation? No? So thanks, Pat. Thanks, Greg. Oh, I'm sorry, the delegations are for the elected officials, sir. You can talk to them afterwards if you choose.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. And if you do have any other questions in regards to the report, you can contact either Greg or I. But it's been great doing business with you.
Yes,
Thank you very
thank
much.
you very much for
Much
all the
appreciated.
information. It's going to be definitely helpful as we go forward, probably strategic planning.
Great.
Merry Christmas as well.
Same to you. Thank you. So with that, we're going to move to 7.1 under reports, because we passed over that one there. So report 11 to, sorry?
If the media is wishing to ask questions of the consultant, you might want to.
Oh, I'm sorry. Are you actually, you are leaving right away, are you?
Oh, we were.
didn't realize that. Are there immediate?
Well, actually,
Sorry, we didn't know the process.
no, and that's fine. Actually, thanks for that. I didn't. I had my head down, didn't see you were leaving. So maybe we'll recess for a few minutes, because I know some of the media might have questions, and definitely while the experts are here, it'd be great to talk to you.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll recess
Should we do
for
it
3
out
minutes,
here then?
please.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. I had my head down. I didn't see them. Oh, sorry. You okay, Bert? Thanks, Shaw, for sticking with us. So we're going to move back to reports. We skipped over and we're back into report 7.1, which is 11.211 from the Director of Corporate Administration. This is our Dawson Creek Airport Sustainability Report to follow up after our delegation today. So, Councillor McFadden.
I would move that the report be referred to strategic planning, and I guess along with the report from Ian that accompanied it, it's all one package, all under 7.1, is that correct?
Yeah.
So moved, then it go to strategic planning.
Okay, second by Councillor Kenny. And any questions from council on this? No, it's just thanks again to the consultants for bringing forward that report, because as I was just saying off camera there, it's you don't want to throw good money after bad. We want to make sure we have a plan, and so I totally agree that go through with strategic planning, see what comes out of that, and see what our next steps will be for the airport. So all those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. And we had covered off everything else, so that brought us up to 9, which is mayor's business. I'll start off with, under mayor's business, congratulating MLA Blair Leckstrom for being a grandpa.
Oh, good.
Lindsay had her baby a couple of days ago, Sawyer Dean Borick. I believe was 8 pounds 9 ounces or 8 pound 11 ounces, a boy. And so yeah, I phoned Blair already, and but I just wanted to publicly say congratulations to him and to Vicky on being grandparents.
We're so excited for this.
And of course, congratulations to Lindsay. As everyone knows, was a employee here at the City of Dawson Creek for quite a while, and is an employee over at Global Spectrum. So. Also under Mayor's business, we have 9.1, which is council appointments. I believe I've spoken with everybody on council. Some of these were legislative appointments and others were community appointments, so you'll see that in front of us, and that will be posted to the website. And as we go forward, if there's any questions from council on specific appointments that they've been tasked to, let myself know or staff. We can get you any information, but more importantly, we'll encourage the community groups and to be involved as well with yourselves. So with that, Jim, we're going to jump up now to strategic priorities chart.
Yes, Your Worship. If you look at the chart, you will see that all of your strategic priorities were accomplished in this year, and that there are a couple of top 3 items for departments that were not. I'd like to speak to those. The first is the fire services bylaw. It's a 3-stage process. The first was the fire underwriters survey. The second is fire services plan, and the third is bylaw amendments out of the fire services plan. We had hoped to have the fire services plan to you at this meeting. There is a preliminary copy that the chief and I have been reviewing, but it's just not in a form yet, so it'll come to your first meeting in January. And it does propose some amendments to your bylaw. So you'll be seeing that. And the second was the development cost charges bylaw through the infrastructure and development. And I think it'd be a fair characterization to say that the development community is still not completely comfortable with that idea and have asked for further consultation. And so the department has committed to give them those consultation opportunities before anything comes to you. So we expect that'll be relatively early in the new year.
Any questions from council? Well, then just pass on our thanks, please, Jim, to all the staff. As we've discussed in the past, the strategic priorities and going through this process is not only helpful for council, but I believe helpful for staff as well for directions. So congratulations and thank you to getting our top 5 worked on this year. On that, we're going to move into the question and answer period. Brenda, anybody registered for that?
No.
Thank you. Media question period. Anything at this time for the media?
Just,
go ahead, Matt.
One question in regard to the sewer master plan. I'm not sure if it was in the report, but is there a timeline for when that plan would start and finish?
I'll kick that over to Kevin, Your Worship.
Thank you.
Through Your Worship, they will commence early in the new year, likely now due to holidays, and it's projected to take 10 to 12 months.
Anything else then, Matthew, this time? Or?
No, thank you.
Okay.
I just had a question about the sewer master plan too. Can you just go over some of the major projects for the master plan?
For the master plan?
Yeah.
So through Your Worship, the master plan is going to look at the entire sewer network and do some sewer analysis on it to identify any bottlenecks or deficiencies, and then through that we'll develop a long-range capital plan for improvements. top of that, there'll be a survey component that the consultants will be GPSing all the sewer infrastructure as well. That'll be brought into our GIS system. And there'll be a final report that they will present to council 2020.
Bert, you had a question?
Yeah, I'm just wondering about the airport. You know, Fort St. John, Grand Prairie is only an hour away. Why don't we have a shuttle service that delivers people their greenhouse gases, carbon footprint less for the area and all that stuff, since we're a green city? Just wondering why that isn't happening.
Sure. Well, right now, council's direction that we're looking for is to try to not encourage people to drive to Dawson Creek or Fort St. John in the first place. We'd rather them fly out of Dawson Creek. So that's why we went through this process of having some professionals come forward, consultants come forward with a report on what the steps would be to avoid that. In the short term, I agree, people are still driving to those communities. Our goal is to try to avoid that, to stop that completely. One of the next steps, more than likely, will be to get that ticket pull information. I'm assuming council will look at that, because we want to know how many people. We don't know for sure. We've got a lot of kind of guesswork, I think, right now on how many people are driving or are flying out of the neighboring cities. As a council, as a chamber of commerce, as a community, we want to see everybody, where possible, using our own and local airport to sustain it. So.
But, okay. Thank you. Any
other media questions then? Okay, on that then we'll move into our committee of the whole. We're a little early, but thankfully we have Sergeant West here. Good morning, sir.
Morning.
I believe you're filling in for a staff sergeant who's enjoying a bit of time off.
I am. He's incommunicado at this point in time, probably drinking some umbrella rum drink somewhere.
Nice.
Before we start, by the way, you have an excellent singing voice. Thanks for partaking with that.
Well, thank you. It was a pleasure being one of your backup singers. I'm acting in Staff Sergeant McDonald's absence, who's again on vacation. I was introduced to council here just under a year ago by Staff Sergeant Trajkovic, who has moved on to the advisory NCO's job within the local detachment. He's attached to the North District. So, with respect to our activities at the detachment, our school visitation program, which is increasing our profile with the students in the community, is in full swing. All of our members, or most of our members, are attached to a school, albeit a public school or a private school, and increasing their activities there, both in a formal capacity in providing information, as well as an informal capacity, just showing up for lunchtime, recess, play dodgeball with the kids, whatever the case may be. Reduce that fear that parents sometimes instill in their children with respect to, if you do anything wrong, he's going to arrest you. We don't want to encourage that. Oftentimes we're helping them, not trying to pull them in. So, in the past month, we've seen the addition of a new cadet to our detachment in Constable Logan Hendricks, who's attached to one of our general duty watches. We are currently looking forward to another constable coming from Depot, who will be here within the week, I'm told, just receiving his paperwork upon his graduation and departure from Depot. So he will be attending our detachment. We've got him lined up with a trainer at this juncture. As you well know, as a council, we've been undergoing a major cell block retrofit, which is nearing completion, and while it's been ongoing, we've been able to maintain service within our own cells, with the exception of a few days here and there where the noxious fumes from the paint got a little bit too strong, and we're forced to transport prisoners to Fort St. John, who are gracious enough to host our guests from our detachment. An update with respect to a major investigation with the detachment. As you're well aware, November the 5th we had a homicide, and we had embarked on an investigation there. Two individuals, two males from the local area, are currently in custody and have been in custody since the incident occurred or shortly thereafter. At this juncture, our general investigation section is preparing, or has prepared and has provided Crown Counsel with a preliminary disclosure package, which you can appreciate was extremely time consuming. because on disclosure, if we miss anything, of course, we get called to task on it when it goes to trial. That procedure is ongoing and will be ongoing for some months as the information continues to be transcribed, put together, and returned from our support agencies in Vancouver through the forensic laboratory. In the month of October, which had previously gone unreported, but I felt was worthy of mention, our GIS section and general duty section solved approximately 30 residential break-and-enters and the arrest of 4 subjects known to operate within the Dawson Creek area. 2, and my report remains to be corrected. I learned this morning that 2 of the 4 are still in custody, 2 being released on conditions into our community and 1 into another community. And I was updated this morning that the individuals that are facing charges are facing between 28 and 29 counts of firearms offenses, offenses to property, and offenses using a firearm in the commission of an offense. So they're very serious charges carrying minimum sentences if they're convicted. So quite a substantial number of firearms had been stolen and were recovered in this incident, taking those back off the street and putting them back into the hands of their lawful owners. The property as well that was stolen that we've been able to get through. We still have some property yet to process. We had on the order of pickup trucks, full property that we brought back to our detachment. A large part of that has been returned to the property owners, thankfully. In the month of November, we did have a number of collisions in the local area, but thankfully none resulted in any fatalities, albeit some of them did have serious injuries associated with them. And just to go over the statistics and trends that we had observed in the last month, in November our officers documented 743 calls for service both in the city and the rural area. There was 14 incidents reported as assaults, 8 of which resulted in charges, and some of the remaining were dealt with through alternative measures. There were 2 break-and-enters that were in the local area that had been in addition to our 30 that we'd managed to solve, 1 of which resulted in charges. We did have 1 reported sexual assault, which is still under investigation. Our theft from vehicle numbers was down just slightly. However, it doesn't appear that issue is abated until we find the right person. I would expect that may continue. There was 1 person charged with that type of activity within the month of November. So we'll see what the resultant statistics do within the next 30 days. But it's one that my officers on the street are actively pursuing. November saw 66 prisoners, which was a slight decrease from the 89 prisoners in the month previous. But none of these specific trends or numbers indicate a marked departure at our place from one month to the next. There are attached statistics with respect to criminal code cases that I've provided to Mayor and Council. Unless you have any questions about those directly, I don't think that I go through all of them.
Sure. So Councillor Malkinson and then Parcel.
Your Worship, can I refer to specific public instances to Mr. West? Is that right?
Probably yes. With cautions, just in case it's something.
Yeah. I'm wondering if there's any leads. I'm aware of some of the dog nappings around town. I'm wondering if there's any leads or any interesting developments there.
There was some information that I had been advised of before I left the office this morning that 2 of the dogs that had been involved in reported dog nappings had been returned. In the way of a retriever and another mixed breed dog. At this juncture, the investigation does have a direction. However, we're not sure how viable a suspect may be.
That was about all I wanted. Oh, I'd also like to congratulate. That seems like a good program going to the different schools. It's good.
Thank you. There was one piece of old business that I believe Sergeant McDonald had embarked on before he left. He provided council a letter, and that was the changing just slightly of our opening hours.
Yes.
He wished me to provide any answers or updates with respect to that at the questions of Mayor and Council as well.
I know we did get that information, and I think you were starting on a pilot for a couple of months starting in the new year. Was that correct? Or did you already start?
In consultation with Staff Sergeant McDonald, we looked at it. We had suggested a 30-day trial period. We also became aware of our policies and procedures with respect to the opening hours, and we have to be open 7.5 hours in the run of a day to satisfy our federal brothers. With that, and in light of that, that may have amended his letter. I didn't have a copy of it, but it would basically be looking at starting instead of an hour later, 30 minutes later, which would satisfy our federal partners as well as Hope Mayor and Council.
Okay.
Now, we have done a little bit of a pilot project of our own, and it appears that our front desk staff with taxi permits, liquor licensing, which are all processed through them before they get to me for final signature, as well as the criminal record checks, which can be problematic and time-consuming, that a large portion of that work was getting done in that unfettered 30 minutes prior to. So it appears that first blush that it will be something that may be positive for our work staff.
Okay, excellent. I got Councillor Parslow first.
Concerning the theft of firearms, most of the places I go to, including my own home, firearms are secured in very strong safes. Were in all these instances, all the guns were properly stored in the rural areas?
The legislation states that one has to have them locked and basically be commissioned with a lock in some way, shape, or form. Now, it doesn't say, or it doesn't state in the legislation what exactly that lock or what that particular receptacle has to be. Some individuals choose to have them locked in a room. As long as they're locked in a room separate from the ammunition and they have a lock on them, then they're satisfying the legislation because it doesn't tell you exactly how to store them. So some of those firearms were stored, in my opinion, safely under the legislation. Some of them were stored in safes, and those safes were defeated through various means by the persons that were intent on stealing those particular firearms. And in long story short, Councillor and Mr. Mayor, if there's a will, there's probably a way. So, barring a bank vault, if someone is dedicated enough, they'll probably steal them. So.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wilbur?
Well, you actually answered my one question about hours of operation, and I'll just include the fire chief with this. Engaging the community, the Kiwanis Daycare had a field trip to the fire hall and the police station this summer, so I just wanted to extend a thank you for participating in the really young youth. And I now have a 3-year-old junior fire chief who packs handcuffs around the house, so thank you very much.
Well, we hope he proceeds to follow a career in law enforcement.
And I know in the latter part of the spring, I know it's a very busy time for yourself and the fire chief as well, because we do so many school tours. It seems like every week we're doing a couple through those times, and they come up here and they don't seem nearly as excited in council chambers as they are when they get to sit on a big red truck or go through a jail cell. So, any other questions for Sergeant? No? Okay, well, thank you again for coming in. Merry Christmas, and please extend our thanks to all the officers over there for the great job they're doing.
And I'd like to take the opportunity to extend the same from our side of things to the city staff, the councillors, and the employees that work over here.
Appreciate that.
Have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
You too. We'll move to 15-2. We have our fire chief in attendance. Good morning, Shorty.
Good morning, everybody. You all have a report, I'm assuming, in front of you. November was actually a fairly busy month in comparison. There was 43 calls. And as you can see in the report, most of those, again, are motor vehicle incidents. Is our biggest culprit for our call volume. Again, you have the report in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions, concerns?
Councillor Schumann?
I don't have any questions or concerns, Shorty, but thank you very much for the invitation to your Christmas social. I did stop by and visited a little bit with your crew. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. One big thing that did happen last month is our ladder truck is now fixed. That was a big project. That was about a 4-day job, so it's now fixed and we're good to go.
Oh, so your request for a new truck's off the table now?
No. Man, hasn't learned.
We're trying. Any questions on the report from council? I want to, as we do usually this time of year, Shorty, we want to remind everybody in the community to be safe with Christmas trees, with candles, with everything that's usually partakes in the festive Christmas season. The last thing we want is somebody's Christmas up in smoke. So we want to make sure that we remind everybody, send that message out to the community. Okay, well, thanks for coming forward. You must have answered all of Cheryl's questions on Friday night.
I don't think he was even there.
So, Director of Corporate Administration, Ms. Ginter. Good morning.
Good morning. There's just a couple of things I want to comment on my report. First thing, at the beginning of every term, there's the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. The conference is in the summer of every year, and the mayor attends each of those conferences, and as well 2 of the councillors do. So the policy states that we do a draw to see which 2 councillors would be attending. And we did that draw. The first conference is in Saskatoon in June of 2012, and Councillor Schumann and Councillor Malcolmson were drawn for that one. The next one in Vancouver, Councillor Kenny and Councillor McFadden, and the next one in 2014 is Niagara Falls, and Councillor Parcel and Councillor Wilbur will be attending those. Now, those aren't mandatory attendance, but so it's up to the councillor if they want to attend or not.
And I think we reminded everybody in orientation, but the reason why we do the draw process now is for budgeting purposes, a lot of it to do, so you don't have 6 going one year and then none going the next year. And so this kind of balances it out for budgeting, but it also ensures that we have some attendance every year. Thanks, Brenda.
And the only other thing I had was in regards to the election. That came in well under budget. Just a couple of suggestions for the next election. Just probably we'll be doing a bit more advertising. People were looking for more information just in regards to the free transit and just general, when is it, where is it? Just more advertising we put forward next time, as well as we might make a change to the special voting opportunities. As Nowickan Friendship Center just wasn't used like we thought it would be, so we might try a new location, such as the Dawson Mall.
And those are decided upon prior to the next election. The report will come forward for council.
Yeah, we'll be putting those forward probably this summer before the election. And that's all I have.
Nothing else to highlight? Okay, so is there anything from council? Councillor Schumann?
I just have a question around the little party thing on Friday. We were going to do different locations. Are we having it here or what?
It's going to be in the first floor, the community services area. We'll start down there for this year, and then we will move it around next year.
And I think what this says here is that they do not like it called the basement, so we'll be calling it the first floor.
It's the first floor of City Hall, not the basement.
Top of page 3.
And that's from 12 till 2 for staff and council. You'll be getting more information, I'm sure, by email.
Yes. Any other questions for Brenda? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much again.
Have a Merry Christmas.
Same to you. And we'll move on to our Chief Financial Officer. Good morning, Shelley.
Good morning. So you have the report in front of you, and it gives you some costing to do with the Calvin Crook Arts Center and the Water Reclamation Project. As well, it gives you status of property tax received to date, which is doing fine to the end of the year. Business licenses went out at the end of November, and we have 1,239 business licenses for 2012. And I'd just like to tell the business owners out there, if you're not carrying on your business, please contact City Hall so we can remove that from the list. We always use the previous year list going forward. We've booked our audit for 2012, and basically a lot of work going on behind the scenes to do with year-end and budgeting, and we're just in the preliminary stages of that, so we're not reporting anything off at this point. And finally, I just wanted to comment on Councillor Parslow's request earlier in the meeting regarding what the costs for the UBCM conference are, and they basically, for 2011, they're about $22,000, and that includes mayor and every councillor that went to that, and it's about a week long, I think, isn't it, Jim?
It's 6 days, yeah.
Yeah. So.
Plus travel sometimes. So.
Well, that includes registration, per diem, transportation, mileage, and accommodations.
Yeah.
So does anybody have any questions?
Well, the first thing I want to highlight is the property taxes when we're at over 99.5% of the intake there, and that's probably one of the highest I've ever seen for people paying their taxes a year. So
it's been very good this year. We've done a lot of work to work with residents on different kinds of payment plans as well as prepayments, and it seems to be making great progress going forward. So
good, excellent. Any questions of Shelley? Okay, Councillor Parslow, I assume that answers your question, though. Okay. Okay. Well, seeing none, thanks very much, Shelley, for that. 15.5 is the report from the Director of Infrastructure and Sustainable Development. Good morning, Mr. Henderson.
Good morning. A couple things I'll highlight out of the report. On the building permits, that report, you'll see at the end of November that we are just shy of $50 million in construction for this year, which is great. Last year we did 58, which was a record. So I would assume one more month to go, we'll break hopefully the 50 million mark, and it'll be another banner year. So been very busy. 88 new dwelling units so far constructed, and the interesting thing you'll see there is how many duplexes and triplexes, and there's been a real shift from the single family that we saw maybe a couple of years ago to where more multifamily units, response to a lot of the rental demand out there, I guess. So we're seeing a lot of the duplexes built, secondary suites, things like that. So great to see. Development permits, year to date we did 22, which is the same as we did in 2010. So we'll probably top that number. The interesting thing that I take out of that, though, that also in that list is how many OCP zoning amendments we made. This year we did 7 compared to 21 last year, so I guess that really speaks to that our new OCP and zoning has kind of hit the mark.
Yeah.
We're not having to change it as much, so that's good to see. Is there any questions just on the building permit planning side, just before I move on to the second part?
Not so much a question, but just something to highlight. We were talking about this before, is when you look at our community, and most of our development used to be between the months of, let's say, May to September, and it's interesting to see how much has come in just in the month of November, which is showing that our developers are working around the clock, around the year now. It's no longer just the boom bust, I guess, of seasonal activity. It's when you look at whether it's out by the airport, industrial parks, or the residential, it's nice to see that year-round activity now for the employers.
Some of the scale of projects too requires them to come in, get that planning side, the permitting, a lot of that work done now, so they can start in the spring. So when you see a $1 million shop going up, they're getting their things in order now, so they can start as soon as the weather permits.
Mm-hmm. The only other question I have to ask, because it's obviously interesting in the community what actually is important, and it's the continuous questions I'm getting about the Wendy's. Is there any update there?
I haven't heard anything, actually. To be honest, the last I heard, which was prior to the last meeting, was that they were doing a redesign on the building, still planning for the new year.
Okay.
So nothing's changed as far as whether it was going to happen, just maybe what the outcome will be. So.
Yeah. Yeah, no, the information that was given to me was this will happen. It's just a matter of trying to work out a couple of the logistical aspects now of 8th Street and access, I was told.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks. Anything else on the building portion for anyone? Okay, well then, we'll move right along, Kevin. Thanks.
Just on to the second part, dealing with Public Works, and you'll see the number of hours that we have down there for November, and it's you know, this winters are becoming more interesting all the time because it goes from winter to spring over and over again, numerous times. Again, this week it looks like we're going to have everything from rain to snow, so it's keeping us busy with the constant change in road conditions and weather, so I'm trying to stay on top of that. One thing you'll notice on our list, there's the walking bridge. That refers to the 102nd Avenue Bridge that we reconstructed after the flood. It's a metal bridge that goes along, I guess it's a metal sidewalk bridge. We pulled that off, had to do some repairs to the culverts, and we pretty much had to reconstruct that and put it back. So we spent 230 hours on that, so that was just one thing to highlight out. Another thing I wanted to highlight is our new water resource manager that's been hired on at the treatment plant, John Callanschuk, who's come to us from Salmon Arm. Him and his wife recently relocated to the community. I think mid-November they arrived, and very positive. John's doing an excellent job, but some of the real interesting things that we're hearing is just how much they love the community. Mm-hmm. And comments to me were that they feel more at home here now in 1 month than they did in 17 years in Salmon Arm. So I think that bodes well for our community. So it's great to hear.
Yeah, and at the Christmas party, I was speaking with John's wife there, and she was saying how much she loves the weather here, and I'm like,
hello.
So I'd like to say it's always like this in December, but
yeah.
No, but I did hear the same thing, and you know, we constantly hear that from couples, from families that move to our community. Is just the friendly atmosphere that we have here, which is one of our selling features. So,
you bet. Another thing I wanted to note is that we finally have the air quality monitoring stations installed. If you remember back earlier in the year, we had an opportunity to partner with the Ministry of Environment to install a couple air quality monitoring. Things kind of got delayed because of numerous things. Flooding was one of them. They had some issues. Anyways, they finally arrived. I think it was the first part of November. We now have a station installed on top of Frank Ross School and one on top of South Peace. So we've partnered with the school district and Ministry of Environment and the city. And the costs of the equipment was borne by the Ministry of Environment. All the city is required to do is attend the sites every 6 days and pull a filter out and send it off to the ministry for analyzing. So that was really our part. So it's very easy, and it's just a great opportunity.
Thank you. Councillor Parslow, I think you have a question there?
Kevin, I understand that's particulate.
Yes.
Yes.
That's correct.
Is there any plans to monitor the air quality due to all the flaring that is covering the city?
They haven't indicated anything to myself. The ministry was, it was just the particulate matter that they had offered up.
My question, supplementary questions, have we made any endeavour to get some monitoring done? Gaseous pollutants over the city?
To date, I have not, and I don't know if it's the direction of council to pursue that or not.
Jim, you wanted to say something?
Through your worship, I think that would be an excellent question for the new oil and gas commissioner, because I know that they do have some budget to participate in such things.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Malkinson?
Forgive my ignorance, Mr. Henderson, but I'm curious who's doing the construction down there in the park, and the park with the brand new bridge that's going across.
This
there.
brand new bridge is the Oilmans
Society
are
that donated the
installing
money?
it. Yes, they're
Okay.
doing all that work.
Okay, I was just curious.
And they're doing a fine job too. That's an
Yes.
amazing piece of architecture that they're putting across there.
Just a quick update on that, I guess, is I have spoke with Mr. Javetkov recently, and he said, you know, they'd hoped to get a little bit more done, but weather had kind of stalled them, and then it's, you know, being that a lot of it's volunteered, obviously you have to work around those schedules as well. So at this point, he indicated that, you know, it didn't look like a lot more was going to get done this winter, but again, you never know. Volunteers may free up and they may get back at it. So.
Okay, follow up to that, and thanks, Councillor, for bringing it up. The bridge, the existing bridge right now, do we have that earmarked for somewhere else? Because I know we're looking for a few more around the walking trail, for instance.
Yeah, that bridge has been offered to the Oilmans to, they were going to remove it and then rededicate it or to another spot. It was kind of a partnership. We had chatted with them. And they're willing to, all the work to remove it and take it out of there, so we said that they could do that.
Okay, excellent, thanks. Did you have oh sorry, Jim?
One thing that Kevin and I have been aware of, but we haven't brought to council yet. As you will recall, ICBC agreed to pay for emergency override on the new lights out here at 13th, so that fire, police, or ambulance can turn the lights red for them to get through the intersection. And that work has been completed, and it was completed under budget, except now we have to return money to ICBC. We thank them very much, but they're getting some money back.
Yeah.
Councillor Schumann, sorry.
Yeah, no, that just reminds me, the pedestrian lights over by the 7-Eleven that did come down in the wind, those will be going back up?
I would certainly assume so, and I will get maybe in touch with CRS, because I know that they had called the contractor to come out and remove them, and I would have assumed they're back up, but I did notice on the weekend that they're still not, so I'll make a note and just see what their plans are. I'm not sure what they're waiting for.
We lost some lights also in that wind. I thought I noticed by Blair's office there.
Yes, we did lose one of the traffic signals temporarily. I think it had blown off, so since up. And we are expecting, I understand, 80-kilometer winds this evening. So hopefully we don't lose any more.
Thought we had more power than that. Thanks. Councillor McFadden?
Just speaking of lights, who's responsible for repair to street lights in the residential area? There's a couple that are burned out up in my hood, and I don't know if it's the city or Hydro.
They can be reported to Public Works.
Okay.
All we need to know is whether it's a wood pole or a metal pole. Wooden poles are BC Hydro, but the city actually takes those trouble calls and enters that data into the BC Hydro website, and then it gets passed on to them.
I'll check it out later.
You bet.
And if not, 311 will help you out.
311.
Any other questions? You have a bit more than Kevin you want to follow up
The only
on?
last thing I was going to touch on is just our watershed steward had submitted some information as well into the report. Just wanted to touch on the Dawson Creek flood damage and restoration, some of the work that he was involved with that we did in a couple of areas that I'm quite excited to see how it works out, is really taking a different approach to some of the creek stabilization and restoration with a live staking and plantings rather than maybe more of a traditional concrete and riprap approach. So we had someone come in that was specialized in this, and they live staked willows and did some cribbing, and it's a very natural approach, but I think nature seems to work the best in these. And we saw in the areas of the creek that held up the best were the ones that were vegetated, obviously, as opposed to the ones that had been maybe landscaped right to the banks. So time will tell, but I think the process worked very well. So. Other than that, just if there's any more questions.
That's right. Any other questions then? No? Well, thanks a lot, and we'll try to hope for no snow till the end of the year, and that way we can say we've used up our budget, right?
That's right. All right, thank
No
you.
worries. Thanks. And 15.6 is the report from the Director of Community Services, and I see we have Mr. Redfern in attendance. Good morning.
Morning. So for clarification, we prefer foundation, not basement or first floor, or footing, anything.
The foundation.
Yeah,
You're,
foundation.
you're holding up the rest of the building?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
That's our preference. So I just have a couple items to discuss today. The first one is just a report back on our Trek to the North Health and Wellness Initiative. So we have, through the community, reached the North Pole of 3,800 and change, and we're at about 4,000 kilometers now as of last Friday.
Excellent.
We're encouraging everybody to still submit, and we're going to try and return home and possibly back to the North Pole again. So that initiative wraps up on December 24th, so if you haven't already turned in your record or your data sheet, please turn that in, or if you haven't signed up, sign up for the last week. I think I caught the tail end as I walked in here, and it was regarding the family skate. Mayor and Council sponsored family skate yesterday. I believe some of the councillors, Mayor, were in attendance. So we had around 65 people participate yesterday, 65, 70, and I feel that it was very well attended and went forward very well. And then the last item is just around the Mayor and Council sponsored family swim. That will be December 24th, noon till 3 p.m. We encourage everybody to go out and participate in that as well. And are there any questions?
People didn't complain seeing me in skates, but maybe in a bathing suit, so we'll still decide on that one. Any questions on the report then from council? The only one I have is, anything we can do to continually advertise the times availability for the walking track. That seems to be the only kind of question I still get from people is around that, and so.
Yes, we have some challenges with events at the event center, and unfortunately it can't be open when they're setting up or when there's events going on, but we're doing our best, and we can look at some more advertising at the desk at the pool or on the city website or even Facebook as well.
Yeah.
And with that note also, we are shifting into our holiday schedule. So again, if anybody's planning on attending something that the city's putting on, those hours of operation have changed a little bit around Christmas and New Year's and some stat holidays. So check that out on the city website as well.
Sure. The other thing I absolutely love when I go down there, seeing the people on the climbing wall. It's just amazing the athleticism of some of the people that are using that. It's really neat to see.
Yeah, and we just hosted a route setting course, which I think is going to further our climbing wall a little bit. Now we can, I guess it focused on setting up some challenging routes, but across the board. So you have your beginners, and you have your intermediate, and you have your experienced climbers. And now we can accommodate that and change it up a little bit and keep people coming out.
Excellent. Any other questions, comments? Okay, Councillor Malkinson.
I also wanted to ask publicly, and I'm not sure, Your Worship, if I have the right person, but I wanted to ask publicly about the status of the hockey rinks around town. It seems to be a big concern. Well, not a big concern, but a few people have asked me about it.
Are you referring to the outside rinks?
Yeah, the outside rinks.
You have exactly the right person.
Okay, yeah. Well, I wasn't sure if it was Kevin or Mr.
No, it's our department, and I don't have that information in front of me, but I can provide that for council. I'll follow up with Darcy. I had reported back previously that generally December we do start. I know we've started on the oval. I've seen the new water truck out there working at getting that flooded, but as far as Crescent Park and Canalta,
yeah.
I'll have to follow up with Darcy and get that information.
I know the weather has been a little unstable lately. I was just wanted to ask.
Yes.
No, that's a good question, because a lot of people in the community are usually asking the same thing, and it's one of those unfortunate situations that we have to actually hope for a week or two of minus 15 in order to get those going. Jim?
Actually, through Your Worship, Mother Nature was very good to you.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
This weekend you could have skated on any street in town, let alone the outdoor rinks.
Thanks, Jim. Okay, well, thank you very much. And thanks to all of the staff for, it's putting together all those reports. I know council appreciates having all that information. There's a lot of that we don't necessarily bring up or discuss in here, but we've read the information, and it's very important that we understand that. It helps us answer questions in the community as well. But on that, please, to all the staff, pass on a Merry Christmas from council. I know it's been very busy lately, and it looks like the next New Year will be no different. So those that have vacation this week and next, please enjoy it, and we'll see everybody in the new year. So on that, I need a motion from council to recess to the closed. Councillor Kenny, Councillor Schumann, all those in favor? Opposed? And it's carried. Thanks, everyone. So we'll take about 5 minutes or so.